When you called Donald Trump transformative, did you mean transformative in a good or bad way?
Got quite the interview here with Mark Carney and Vassy. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Vassy's grilling Mark Carney. She doesn't hold back on him. She asks him some really tough questions, like whether he trusts Donald Trump. What you're going to see here throughout this interview, Mark Carney starts slipping out his carbon agenda, carbon credits, and he mentions key new players in his cabinet. Let's jump into this. Pay attention to his behavior here. He keeps talking down to her, talking over her, doesn't really respect her. It says a lot about the guy.
Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Vassy.
I wanted to start off on your cabinet selections, and in particular, whom you selected for your front bench, because I think a lot of Canadians, like physically, would have looked at that front bench today and said it looked remarkably like the previous government.
So what she's talking about here is this here. This looks like the exact same crew, because it is the exact same crew. Now, there are some new faces here, but same crap, same flies.
Is that not the opposite of what they elected you to do?
Well, there's a number of things that are different in that front bench. So if you look, for example, François-Philippe Champagne is the Minister of Finance. He became the Minister of Finance when I became Prime Minister for that brief period following winning the leadership election. Lots of experience, but not the Minister of Finance. Now he's going to have a real run at being Minister of Finance. Mélanie Joly moving from Foreign Affairs to becoming Minister of Industry. This is a government that has a huge focus on the economies and specifically cost of living, but really growing wages and jobs for Canadians, so she has a crucial role, but it's a new role for her. Dominic LeBlanc as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. I need experience in that role that Dominic has. He's got great relations with a number of the premiers. We are going to focus on building one Canadian economy, changing how we're doing big projects, all in the course of the next several months. Plus, he's been one of the main, if not the main, interlocutors with the level of the U.S. government below President Trump. So I don't want to switch everybody out in that circumstance. And then, you look at Anita Anand, who's moving into foreign affairs. And, it's a big change into those jobs. So there's some similarities. There's experience being deployed in different ways.
Changing their roles doesn't change the fact that these people supported awful decisions that has destroyed Canada over the last 10 years, though.
New Prime Minister, and let's look at the cabinet as a whole, because I'm not quite sure I make the distinction between the quote front bench and the cabinet as a whole. We only have 28 cabinet ministers. That's down from the mid-upper 40s, some previous governments. Half of those ministers are new, never been cabinet ministers before. In many cases, they're new to Parliament as a whole. So we're bringing in a lot of fresh energy, fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, alongside with experience, and that's a good team. That's a good management team, in my judgment.
In contrast, Stephen Harper's government had like 26 or 27 ministers, so smaller than Carney's.
I spent a lot of time trying to construct it that way.
And I do take the point on the fresh faces, but even when you point to the experience of those who are in the sort of biggest roles, the reason why I highlight them is because they were at the forefront of the decisions that the previous government made.
I disagree.
They were. I mean, Mélanie Joly, François-Philippe Champagne, he led the industrial policy. Now he'll be in charge of finance. Dominic LeBlanc led a lot of those files as well. We are used to hearing from them, justifying and explaining the decisions that Justin Trudeau made.
Well,
so now we're going to hear from them again.
Well, first off, now you're hearing from me. I'm a new Prime Minister. I'm the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. I've got very clear set of objectives, which I laid out in the course of my initial government from that cabinet table. Cancel the carbon tax right there. In fact, just to our right is my first act.
Oh, please. I'm the new Prime Minister. I'm the 24th. You're dealing with me now. This guy's such a pompous jerk. Do you want to talk about Champagne's record or any other of these Liberals that are still on the front bench? Look at this post from Table Salt. Oh my God, here's the current state of Ontario's $52 billion subsidized EV industry. Listing them all out, $7 billion PowerCo EV battery plant in St. Thomas postponed due to headwinds. Honda's 4-factory EV supply chain Ontario cancelled. Northvolt cancelled. GM Ingersoll laying off workers. Stellantis halted production. Umicore factory suspended. Ford EcoPro cancelled. This was their big gamble. It all failed. 43% of people voted for more of this. The reason why, they don't know what they voted for. I've been talking to people. I've been hearing a lot of reports. People have no idea what is going on. And the thing that's really spooking people right now is the idea of a home equity tax. That's the one that's really shocking people to the core. Carney's going to need a way to pay for things, and he may just go to that.
But developing this focus on one Canadian economy, getting rid of internal trade barriers. We'll do our job by Canada Day. That means the federal government. We're working with the provinces so that they can move out of the way. Some of them are moving really fast, Nova Scotia, Ontario, others moving fast. We're trying to get all of them. But plus unlocking these major projects that are going to build this economy for the next generations, not just growth today, but growth for generations. That's a focus. That is an entirely new focus of this government. At the same time, we're working on this economic security partnership with the Americans and diversifying our trade partnership. Different focus, different people. I'm bringing a different, I mean, there are so many differences. As I say, half of the cabinet's different. Big change in terms of priorities. Big change in terms of speed.
This guy's so desperate to distance himself from Justin Trudeau when he knows he stinks just as bad as Trudeau. It's the same crap. It is the same flies. Just listen to this interview. As it goes on, he starts slipping out what his real agenda is. He starts bringing out that carbon capture word, carbon credits.
This is one of the fastest swearing in Canadian history. It will be one of the fastest returns in Parliament in Canadian history. You'll see with the speech from the throne, which the King will deliver in whatever it is, 12 days' time, 13 days' time. And in that speech from the throne are going to enumerate some priorities, including success by Canada Day. So we're going to go hard.
So how do you articulate, because you conceded today, you did through the campaign, that the mandate you have is one for change. It's against that backdrop that I'm asking those questions about those big faces for your cabinet. How would you articulate to Canadians like what that change will actually look like? Is it just you?
So, well, no. Okay, if I may, you are going into process and personnel. I'm going to results. I'm talking about one Canadian economy. I'm talking about getting rid of all the federal
But those personnel didn't deliver.
No. Please, let me answer the question. Those are...
Easy, Carney, easy. Be nice now. This guy legitimately just snapped at her. And this is not the first time. He keeps interrupting. He interrupted Rosemary, and he seems to be overly aggressive and nasty to female journalists. So either women who voted for him haven't seen this, or somehow they approve of that kind of behavior.
Are real results that will happen or not. We will either pass that legislation or not, first point. Secondly, in terms of working with the provinces, working with Indigenous peoples, working with the territories, identifying the nation-building process, a process that has already begun. I helped start it during my first few days as Prime Minister in the previous mandate, now going to accelerate through, already talking with Premier Smith, Premier Moe, Premier Ford, Premier Legault, all the premiers about, Premier Canoop, sorry, now I'm going to offend somebody because I haven't mentioned them all, but they're all working on this and working towards our Saskatoon First Ministers meeting, June 2nd. Again, that's a tangible thing. You'll see where we're coming together on specific projects. What's the federal government doing to support those? What are we doing with respect to our relationship with the United States? So these are all real things. And to reduce it, to faces, personnel, and then, by the way, to ignore half of the cabinet, which is brand new, literally, never been in cabinet before, and now they're in very senior roles at core priorities for the government.
It's definitely not to reduce the new people that I ask. It's because, to be fair,
can I remind as well?
Yes, you can, but I want to finish after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you finish and then I'll...
I was just going to say that, I covered that government extensively. Those are the ministers who told me time and time again the carbon tax was the only way to address climate change, who told me time and time again the only way to be fiscally responsible was to bring in capital gains tax changes. Yes, you came in and you changed that, but these are the people for 10 years who defended what you say you have a mandate to change from. It's not just a personnel thing that I'm asking about.
Let's be clear about mandates. We just had an election. You might have noticed. I think you covered it, right?
Correct.
19 million Canadians.
The guy is so smug, so arrogant. She's doing a good job playing it off, but geez.
Voted. More Canadians voted for a political party, the Liberal Party, than ever before. We have more votes than anyone else. We have majorities in 7 of the 10 provinces. We have the most seats in Parliament, and we ran on a very clear platform of change. Canadians...
You did not run on change. You ran on fear of Donald Trump. That's the only thing you ran on. That's the only reason why you're able to trick people. You fear-mongered. You used the dirtiest, oldest trick in the book. Pierre Poilievre ran on hope. It wasn't enough to get people out of their seat and want to vote for Pierre Poilievre to get him to win. He still pulled in 8.1 million votes. Carney was able to pull in 8.5 million out of strict fear. It's a lot easier to get someone to move if a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you versus saying, hey, look, there's a nice apple tree down there. Let's go pick an apple and eat it. Fear moves people more, but it shouldn't be used as a crux as a political strategy. It was disgraceful what he did.
The majority of, more Canadians chose that platform of change than anybody else's. So we have a clear mandate. I come and all the deputies, Liberal deputies in Parliament come with a responsibility to deliver that change. That's what, Canadians, they put their trust in us. They expect us to deliver. And I'm going to put together the cabinet, the legislative agenda, and work with the provinces, work with Indigenous peoples, work with the territories in order to deliver for Canadians. And Canadians will judge the change that they receive. That's the right thing. And I'll do what's necessary with the people I have around the table in order to deliver that.
I want to talk about something a bit more conventional when you talk about big projects, and that is around energy. And in particular, when you said during the campaign you want to make Canada an energy superpower, do you mean you want Canada to export more oil and gas?
Well, that is an element of it, but it's not the element of it. So there are multiple elements. When you're a superpower, let's look at America. America is a superpower. It is a superpower because it has a strong economy. It is a superpower because it has a strong military. Arguably, it is also a superpower because it has soft power, has cultural, the American influence is multiple, and all of those aspects contribute to it. So when I talk about being an energy superpower, I always say in both clean and conventional energies. So what does that mean? Yes, it does mean oil and gas. It means using our oil and gas here in Canada to displace imports wherever possible, particularly from the United States. It makes no sense to be sending that money south of the border or across the ocean. But yes, it also means more exports without question. But it doesn't stop there. That in and of itself doesn't make us an energy superpower. We can be an energy superpower, and we have all the components in nuclear, in hydro, in potentially in carbon capture and storage.
Ding, ding, ding. There we go, folks. He's going to bring in his agenda. He's just waiting to slip this out. So for anyone who's new around here who didn't see my video on the CBAM program or the carbon credits program, I suspect, it's my guess that he's going to be doing this. He's going to have companies will have to buy carbon credits of low or high integrity to offset their emissions and create a whole industry out of this, which Brookfield Asset Management is already a world leader in. And seeing how he has $7 million worth of stock options in Brookfield, this will make him a very wealthy man. And not only that, it'll make Stripe very wealthy, because Stripe was an early investor in the Frontier program, which got funding from all these big tech companies to do carbon credits. And so anyone involved in that, like Team Trump over here, specifically Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, all these people invested in Stripe, Elon Musk being one of them and one of the founders in 2011. Not only that, Michael Moritz, who used to be a former partner at Sequoia Capital, also sat on the board of Stripe with Mark Carney, who ironically invested a ton of money in Chinese tech, which you can see here the US government didn't like. US lawmakers accused VC firm of funding Chinese military-linked firms. Sequoia Capital, Qualcomm Adventures, and 3 other venture capitals plowed $3 billion into Chinese tech companies that support Beijing's military and repression of minorities in Xinjiang, a U.S. congressional report alleged. And remember, China is the world leader in eco-sustainable products like solar panels, wind farms, all that kind of stuff. And Mark Carney just happens to have ties with the leader, Xi Jinping. This all points to carbon capture. This all points to Stripe, which is directly not only involved in it, but the backbone of it.
Which is going to be one of the determinants of of competitiveness and productivity in a number of sectors. So what are we doing to build out all those aspects in our economy? What are we doing today? And look, if I were, I shouldn't classify myself, but a conventional politician might say, you know what we should be judged by is whether or not we approve one pipeline, right? And that's going to make us an energy superpower. And that is a type of objective that you can define and you can point to that is progress, but it doesn't accomplish the bigger goals. And it's not at the level of what Canada is capable of. We need to do multiple things at the same time in order to build this base so that we are creating wealth and competitiveness, better lives for Canadians for generations. So we're going to be very ambitious across a range. That's why we're not asking for one nation building project. We're asking for nation building projects. And
Vassy Capello's body language here, if you look at her face, she doesn't buy it. She knows she's smelling something funky. And what's going on here is Mark Carney keeps saying it's not just one project, it's looking into the future. It's a grand scheme of projects. He's trying to make this seem too big, too grand for the little peons to understand, when really his entire agenda here is to do that carbon credit system. And he wants to make it seem like we won't understand. So he's saying, oh, it's going to be the big array of projects, of which he's going to tuck the carbon credits in there as one of them, and then it'll become the biggest one, which then he'll get rich off of.
We are going to move as rapidly as possible on as many of them as possible.
I think if I'm accurately representing the point of view from people whose livelihood depends on the conventional energy sector, it's not that they're asking you like, that's it, that's the be all end all. It's that they want to know where conventional energy fits into your ambitions. And it's not just because, if I may, not just because of the record of the previous government, it's because of you yourself, your book Values, for example, which extensively talks about a reorientation of the market around the climate imperative. I think Canadians had been asking throughout the campaign, and now, like, is this Prime Minister Mark Carney of values, or is it the Prime Minister of the campaign? Like, are you going to build that pipeline if the consensus exists?
Vassy, he did not like that. He doesn't like people talking about his book in his face. You could see him like moving around in his chair. He's like, he couldn't get comfortable in his own skin. She basically called him out. Which Carney do we got? Is it the values Mark Carney or this new make-believe one?
First off, I've said repeatedly yes, first point. Secondly, that because I understand the need for that consensus, I'm a prime minister who can help create that consensus. You can't create a consensus on your own, but you have to drive processes that bring provinces along, bring the private sector in. Remember, I've got extensive experience. This is not just a concept to me. I have been involved in major energy projects for over 3 decades in the private sector. So I've got that experience, bringing the provinces, working with
what he's got is a big ego.
Indigenous partners, putting in place, as we have, billions of dollars of financing for those Indigenous partners, bringing in somebody like Tim Hodgson, who, when he was CEO of Hydro One, was one of the only major corporations to have a major Indigenous partnership program that actually worked. So we're bringing the components in. We have to deliver it.
As you said, they're bringing in all the components like Tim Hodgson. This is a guy, he's known for 20 years at Goldman Sachs. I'll get into this deeper in another video, but he's bringing in this guy because he can trust him with that Minister of Energy position he so desperately needs, handled by someone who's his right-hand man, someone he can trust that will bring in the carbon credit system.
Let me make another point, because I appreciate that you've read my book very carefully. At the core of the way I talk about the energy transition is the future of, including about Canada being an energy superpower, is the future is low risk. Canada's low risk is a business investment place. Low cost. We're getting the cost down, including the oil sands. The marginal production is low cost, and low carbon. All three of those come together. We have the ingredients of all that. Let's get together and move on it. And it takes more than just one pipeline in order to accomplish.
And I do understand that point, but I think, like, in your book, multiple occasions, for example, you talk about the merits of a carbon tax. And now we have a different Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who says, the first thing I did in this very room was get rid of the carbon tax.
Got rid of the consumer carbon tax,
correct,
which is different than
the industrial side, but it's still a portion of the carbon tax scheme that existed in this country. How much of the
resources did that consumer, how much of the emission reduction did that consumer
9%.
Yeah. Well, it's actually 6, but you've extrapolated out to 2030.
If it went as far as it was supposed to go, it's supposed to be. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing. It's not much. It's not much, and we can do.
So they ruined Canadians' lives for not much. Congratulations.
Much better with different approaches, including collaborative approaches, which is what I'm looking to do. And look,
how can you be collaborative?
If you want a simple answer on will I support building a pipeline? Yes, that simple answer. I've given that multiple times, but I don't stop at that. Let's stop it. For example, if you want a simple answer on how do I make homes more affordable, I could just say, we're going to cut GST on homes. But that doesn't solve the problem. Just doing one pipe, it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. That's a positive thing, and working collaboratively in order to happen. But it's not enough. It's not enough to make Canada an energy superpower. It's not enough to build our full potential.
It's not enough, but don't worry, he's got a plan that will be enough, and it'll have something to do with carbon credits and this whole eco-green transition. And don't worry, he knows Xi Jinping, and China has a lot of solar panels, a lot of wind turbines, and all sorts of other crap that has been proven to not be very efficient and being terrible for the environment, that he's going to ship over here and put all over our country.
Not enough to truly get incomes growing across the country. We can do much more. We are going to be very, very ambitious. Build big, build bold, build now.
It does speak, though, to what people in Alberta and Saskatchewan who didn't vote for your party are worried about, right? They are worried that it is the Mark Carney of values. It is the Justin Trudeau government. And the reason I ask about that is against that backdrop, right? You are still saying you're going to keep C-69 in place. You are going to keep the emissions cap in place. They view that as evidence of something. They view that, pardon me, as evidence of something that runs counter to what you're saying.
What
right
I've
now.
said very clear. Look, I am a pragmatist. I go over and over on this, and I really am.
This guy's unbelievable. He interrupts Vassy every single time to the point where she said, "Excuse me," and had to finish her sentence. She didn't do it the last time just a minute ago. She didn't do it the other 6 times, or the time where Mark Carney snapped at her, said, "I'm Prime Minister. I'm the 24th Prime Minister of Canada."
I'm interested in results. So the point of building a pipeline, the point of building out carbon capture is to get the results, to get get those barrels to the market,
to build out carbon capture. Just a little refresher for everyone at home or for anyone who's new. So we had, during Justin Trudeau's reign of terror here in Canada, we're not going to read out everything, but basically he brought in the carbon tax, brings in Mark Carney. Mark Carney also joined Brookfield as vice chair of ESG and impact investing in the same month, August of 2020. And since then, they've added all of these things. These are all eco-green agenda things, which might sound flowery and amazing, which has just decimated our country. Clean Fuels Fund, Zero Emissions EV Fund, forcing Canadians to buy EVs by 2035, emissions cap on industry. Here's all these EV projects. Most of them have gone belly up and gone bust. As I mentioned earlier, Ford, GM, Ingersoll, Honda, Stellantis, Northvolt. What's left here? Is Volkswagen, is Lion Electric still going? I'll have to go through and update all of these. Electric powertrains, Goodyear. Almost all of these have gone bust.
those barrels to the market to get carbon down. You can do both. We have the capability to do more. And we have the capabilities financially, from a technological perspective, in terms of the companies. Federal government can play a role. The province of Alberta, obviously other provinces, Indigenous people have to come along for almost all of these projects in order for them to actually work. And what I'm putting on the table is, okay, let's go. Let's not talk about this. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's focus in on specific projects and let's work on them together. Now,
there's Justin Trudeau's contribution. Roll up your sleeves.
Very constructive, sorry if I may, constructive conversations with Premier Moe in this vein, also with Premier Smith in this vein. So the next stage of that is to sit down across premiers and other groups and start to refine that list and move forward. And we will change things at the federal level that need to be changed in order for projects to move forward.
Does that include C-69 or the emissions cap?
It could include both. Absolutely could include both. But I'm not going to do it conceptually. I'm going to do it on specifics. Do it for moving forward. And that's the point. The test is Canadians deserve results, not rhetoric and not talking past each other. And one of the things that I feel very strongly about and understand, I think from both being in the private sector and working across government over the years, is you can't get results unless you work across partners. So it's the federal government, it's the provinces, it's the companies, it's Indigenous peoples. You can't get result if you just say, we're not going to have environmental assessment. The Harper government tried that approach, effectively tried that approach. It doesn't work. You get tied up in court. So what you have to do is to work together for an efficient and effective environmental assessment process. What we have clearly signaled, and we've been absolutely clear, I've been very clear about this, is we will rely on provincial environmental assessments as appropriate. That is a huge shift in approach that potentially unlocks a series of projects. You have to do other things at the same time. Again, roll up our sleeves, sit down, map out what needs to be done. We've got the team here, and we have the will to do it.
I'm already getting the wrap sign, and I apologize. I know your time is very limited. I wonder if I could ask very briefly on how Parliament will work, on what you just mentioned. Have you spoken to Pierre Poilievre about seeking support from the Conservatives in advancing parts of that agenda?
Mr. Poilievre and I spoke after the election, immediately after the election. He congratulated me, and I signaled to him that if he was, as he is, seeking a by-election, I would call it as soon as I'm allowed to do that. So that was the conversation that we've had. He's not the leader of the opposition, as you know, at the moment. So any conversations, obviously, at least in the near term, would be with Mr. Scheer.
Have you explained?
He's still the leader of the Conservative Party, technically not the leader of the opposition in the House.
Had any conversations with anyone from any party about crossing over to help form a majority? No. When you called Donald Trump transformative, did you mean transformative in a good or bad way?
Yin and yang. There's
Look at this guy's face. He knows he's full of crap. He's got to deal with Trump. Those dirty dogs know each other. Look at this guy.
In a good or bad way?
Yin and yang. There's both.
There's both?
I said what I said. He is. What matters for Canadians is that the relationship with the U.S. has changed. I've been clear about that.
The only thing he's been clear about is how much he lies. Vassy knows full well that answer was crap. He was licking Trump's boots because that was part of the deal.
Clear about that for months. I think others were very slow to recognize that. I think it's now increasingly understood. Secondly, that it has bigger ramifications than just the U.S. The way the global economy is working is changing. We need to change. Working with President Trump, working with his team as possible, sovereign nation to sovereign nation, that's what I'm pursuing.
Do you plan to renegotiate USMCA? Can you trust him as a partner?
The sequencing, we'll see about the sequencing. I think the revealed preference of the U.S. is working on some of these sectoral aspects before broader trade deals. It is an advantage to us that USMCA exists. It is not right that it's being violated, but it is still an advantage that it exists, and we intend to make the most of our advantages in these negotiations.
Do you trust him?
I will work with them and negotiate with them, yeah.
But do you trust him?
Look, my answer is my answer.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Prime Minister, I appreciate it very much. Thank you for all your time.
Thanks.
That was a great question, Vassy. That was great. It tells a lot. It left him in a weird spot. His answer says a lot. He doesn't want to answer. If he says he trusts him, then it kind of leads on that these guys are doing something. I'm convinced of it. They know each other. They work this out. Trump installed him in Canada. That's why he interfered in our election. Until I'm proven wrong, maybe something blows up and shows that that's not the case and it was just Donald Trump running with the 51st state comment because it pissed off Trudeau. That's possible too. But based off everything we've seen with the SEC report, that letter of Brookfield protecting Donald Trump, Mark Carney's company GFAN's being investigated by the U.S. government, there's a you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back situation.